So today we're going to be working on our side-by-side. It needs to have the water pump, the water pump replaced on the engine, and we need to replace a CD boot on one of the rear axles. And I got my two boys and my daughter here that are going to help. Listen to me.
Side-by-side, then we're going to wait for my favorite sister, then she went away, and I left us on the scene, so I'm telling her,
We'll put the impact driver on.
no.
Charlie?
I get serious.
I know. All right, so quick comment. I'll show this getting cleaned up, or just showed this getting cleaned up, and I'm sure there was somebody yelling at their TV saying, "You're an idiot. This whole thing comes apart. The ball bearings will come out," and that would make it a lot easier to clean it. And if you're that person, you're right. And so I did get it apart and got the ball bearings out. And the race and all that, and so now we're going to stick this back together. One thing you do want to keep track of, both of these parts, both this part and this part are directional. Now this one's kind of easy. It's got a lip on the splines there, and that's for that snap ring that kind of locks this together to go in. And then the other side has a lead in. So this is pretty straightforward. Obviously your shaft is gonna go where you have a lead in. So this is like towards the center of the vehicle. This end is towards the wheel because that snap ring is on the bottom of the shaft. So it'll go together like this. And this race has a ring on the inside of that, and then nothing on the other side. And I'm not 100% sure how that goes back together. We're just gonna 50-50-90, see if we can get it right. I have a feeling it only goes back together one way, so we'll try it and then we'll try it the other way.
The video with the removal and installation of the water pump is a bit difficult to see what's going on. So I'm just going to be touching on the highlights, and hopefully it's still helpful to you. So the most difficult part of this job is not actually replacing the water pump. It's getting access to the water pump. There's an engine control module mount that needs to get taken off, as well as the flywheel. So you will need some type of bearing puller to get that apart. Once everything's out of your way, getting the actual bolts at the water pump, getting that pulled back apart is not too difficult. There are a couple things to look out for as we put this back together. Mostly, I would say the torque spec on the bolt that holds the flywheel onto the crank. You definitely want to torque that to spec, and then making sure you get your crank position sensor gapped properly relative to the cogs and the flywheel. If you just put that in there, there's a real good chance you're going to end up with that being too close and it's going to rub. And then I would say the last thing is it actually calls this out in the manual, but you want to put grease on your O-ring to help hold it in the groove when you install your pump cover. That thing just wants to fall right out of there if you try to do it any other way.
So I've got the pump out now here on the bench. I kind of want to just take a look at it and see why it's leaking or where it was leaking from. And yeah, that'll do it. There's probably a dynamic seal in there that has like a elastomer and a spring in it that goes around the shaft, and that shaft is wobbling, and it's gonna just tear that up. So it makes sense. Probably the bearings are shot. Is there a new one? Yeah, so yeah, no play in that. What if I do the same thing? To be honest, I don't like this way they did this seal. There's just a little elastomer seal. It must sit in a groove on the block that rides on this flat surface. It's not a very big land. I don't know. It seems like this should have been I don't know. It's not even seem like a great application for a face seal, but whatever. Maybe a face seal, but not a face seal with a elastomer like that. And this. All right, so it looks like we got to transport a little bung to this hole. We'll take a shot of that and figure out how it's oriented. Kind of sitting, point it back a little bit. Then I'll get this thing put in. So there's one thing we've got to do before we put this pump back in. You can see there's a broken off bolt in that hole. And so we're going to try to weld a nut to the head of that. What's not much sticking out, but we're going to try to weld onto that and then use the nut to get it out. There's not even enough on there to put a pair of vice grips on, so I think that's our only choice. If that doesn't work, we're probably, I don't know how we would drill and tap it in the space that it's in. I don't know if that's really an option. So let's see what we can do with the welded nut. Go from there. So I was able to weld a nut onto the end of that broken stud, and I have no idea if it's actually going to hold and back out. So let's gingerly try to see if that's going to come out. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'm gonna make one last gripe about this pump that I've got to replace it. It's supposed to be a factory part, but these two screw holes are what mount the crankshaft position sensor and they were just holes. They weren't threaded, and I assume that means that these bolts are self-tapping bolts, which they seemed like that was true, but man, I just went ahead and tapped them the same, you know, thread pitch. Just didn't make sense to me to try to fight with that while it's installed under here. So I went and tapped them ahead of time. I think it's crazy they don't just make that a threaded hole. I don't know how much money they're saving, but I guess probably when they put this together on the assembly line, they can get it right every time. But anyways, that's my last complaint on this thing. Alright, so this is coming along pretty good. Water pump's in, pulleys on, belts on, throttle position sensors bolted back in, and the flywheel's on. I don't know the torque spec for that, so I'm going to see if I can find something on Google quick, and if not, we'll give it the old good and tight German torque spec for a crankshaft, flywheel bolt, and yeah, we're about done. We're just kind of adding all the accessories. Honestly, the worst part of this job was getting, and I'll point this out so if you're a person working on this, you'll see it too. Those crankshaft position sensor, those are like slotted holes to adjust that distance, and I did not notice that until right now, but that'll contact probably and ruin that sensor. So I'm going to back those off, position that out slightly, maybe give it a 1/4 inch of clearance. I don't know what the spec is on that. I doubt that there's even written down, but 1/4 inch ought to do it. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and here we go. So I checked the manual on this. I was able to find it online, which is nice, and it says the torque spec for this crankshaft bolt is 49 foot-pounds, not 50, 49. Thought that was funny. So all right, so I don't know, my light died on me, but I do wanted to say I found the torques, or the gap, the correct gap on this. They call it a speed sensor, but crankshaft position sensor, and it's 59 thousandths. So I am going to try to get that close. Definitely wasn't the 1/4 inch I mentioned, so we'll make it a little better here.